you're the most useless child, but I'm glad you finally managed to get married." My mother, Martha, said this loud enough for everyone in the chandelier-lit, lavish reception hall to hear. Just seconds earlier, this moment had been the happiest of my life, until that single sentence froze everything. Sitting at the head table, I felt Eric, who has just become my husband, squeeze my hand tightly. Without his warmth, I might have collapsed right then and there. Dressed in a pure white wedding gown, surrounded by loved ones' blessings, with the man I love by my side. This was supposed to be the perfect day. But instead of offering her blessing, my mother unleashed the same cursed words that had bound me my entire life. It was the very judgment I'd been hearing since I was old enough to understand words. I slowly lifted my gaze to my mother, who was gripping the microphone with a satisfied smile. Around her sat my brothers, Chris, the eldest and a lawyer, Fred the second, a dentist, and my twin younger brothers, Tyler and Josh, both teachers. They all averted their eyes with awkward, resigned expressions. So this was how it would end after all. The last fragile thread of hope snapped with an almost audible sound. There was no more anger, no more sadness left inside me. Only a cold, crystal-clear resolve. This ends here. I gently squeezed Eric's hand back and rose from my seat. I could feel every eye in the room fixed on my every movement. Stepping toward the microphone, I took a shaky breath and met my mother's gaze head-on. "Mother, thank you so much for your heartfelt words." My voice was startlingly calm, even to myself. But I need to make one small correction. That useless daughter somehow became the most useful person in this family. My mother's confident smile froze on her face. "What are you—" She started to speak, but couldn't form the words. My brothers stared at me, holding their breath as if sensing a storm was about to break. They didn't yet understand what I meant. To them, I was still the insignificant assistant working at a small design firm tucked away in a corner of Manhattan. That's the role I had chosen to play and the story I had let them believe. I never thought the truth was worth telling. But that performance ends now. I was born the third of 5 siblings and the only daughter. Chris, the eldest, is a well-known lawyer on Wall Street. The second, Fred, became a dentist. Below me are the twins, Tyler and Josh, both earnest, respectable teachers. To my mother, their careers were sources of immense pride. 4 sons. That was her entire world. She often proclaimed, "Boys are the pillars of the family. They are the treasures who will carry the Anderson name to greater heights." Within that world, as the only daughter, I was treated as if I barely existed. When I told her I wanted to major in design at university, she sighed. "You can't make a living off something like that. Be practical like Fred." Even when I graduated at the top of my class, she didn't attend my ceremony because it clashed with Josh's regional basketball tournament. The tournament happens every year. Her treatment of me didn't change once I entered the working world. Whenever my brothers bought new cars or received promotions, the whole family gathered to celebrate. But when I proudly told her that, after years of hard work, I'd become a project leader at my small design firm, her reaction was always the same. "Oh, is that so? Anyway, help Chris with his wedding preparations, and make sure he introduces you to someone nice so you can get married soon too." And once I turned 30 and was still single, the pressure only intensified. "What are you doing with those tiny jobs? If you don't hurry, you really won't be able to have children, you know?" Those kinds of words were her way of saying hello. To my mother, her 4 sons embodied the glorious future of the Anderson family, while I, her daughter, was nothing but a burden. She never could have imagined that this troublesome daughter had, through her own efforts, built more wealth than all 4 of her brothers combined. The only person who ever truly understood me was my father, Dan. He was the one who always praised my artwork. "Sherry, your sense of color is nothing short of genius." When I told him I was quitting my job to start my own design firm out of a tiny apartment, he silently handed me $10,000. His entire savings. "This is an investment. I want to be the first to invest in your talent." I can't even begin to express how much those words supported me. My company, fortunately, took off. I repaid my father's investment in no time, and the business expanded steadily year by year. But I never revealed my success to anyone else in the family. I knew that neither my mother nor my brothers would ever acknowledge it. Then one day, everything changed. The construction company my father ran was hit by a combination of bad luck and shifting times. It collapsed almost overnight. He fought desperately to save it, but eventually the stress took its toll, and he collapsed. When I rushed to the hospital, he was frail and exhausted. Only to me did he confess the truth. He was drowning in debt and had no way to repay it. "Sherry, I'm sorry. I don't want to worry your mother or your brothers, and I suppose I can't let go of my pride. I don't want them to see me like this. Pathetic." Tears welled up in his eyes. Then he revealed something shocking. Behind the dazzling facades of my brothers' lives, everything was on the brink of collapse. Chris was buried in loans, constantly juggling funds to maintain his flashy Wall Street lifestyle. Fred had taken on a massive bank loan to purchase state-of-the-art medical equipment and was struggling to pay it back. And the twins, Tyler and Josh, though living stable lives as teachers, could barely support their respective families on their modest salaries. "All of us, including me, are living on pride and appearances," my father said. "If I asked them for help, they'd push themselves beyond their limits to save me, and it would destroy their lives. The only one in this family I can truly rely on is you, Sherry." His words struck painfully close to home. I was the only one in this family who was genuinely financially independent. My father could turn to me for help without wounding my brothers' egos, and I could help quietly. That day, I accepted everything. I took on the company's debts. And to protect the family home from foreclosure due to missed mortgage payments, I took a specific legal step. I transferred ownership of the house from my father to myself. In other words, that house legally became mine. Of course, it was merely a formality, with the understanding that my parents would continue living there. My father wept as he thanked me. "Don't tell anyone about this. Not until I die. No, not even after. This is my final pride. Please." I kept that promise. For the 3 years until his death, and for 2 years afterward, a total of 5 years, I quietly paid the mortgage on the house every month. I lied to my mother, saying, "It's covered by Dad's inheritance and insurance money." My brothers never asked about the family's finances. They were too consumed by their own lives to care about the house. Why didn't I tell the truth even after my father passed away? Because it was his last request. And perhaps, deep down, I wanted to preserve this fragile, warped piece in our family. It was my survival strategy. To keep the waters still in a house that had always treated me like a stranger. And in those lonely, despairing days, Eric appeared in my life like a ray of light. He was an elite investment banker, but he wasn't shallow. He never judged me by my title or company success. The first night I told him about my family, he simply listened for hours in silence. Then he took my trembling hands in his and looked at me with unwavering eyes. You are the strongest, smartest, and most deeply loving person I've ever met. You're not alone anymore. From now on, I'll carry half of that weight by your side. Your talent, your strength, and even the vulnerability you've never shown anyone. I respect all of it with my whole heart." His words slowly thawed the ice that had encased my heart for decades. But after Eric and I got engaged and began planning the wedding, my mother's sarcasm escalated to new heights. As I spread out brochures for elegant wedding venues, she shot me a look of open contempt. "Sherry, know your place. How someone as useless as you managed to land an elite man like Eric is nothing short of a miracle." A miracle. But don't get ahead of yourself. Since he's paying for the wedding, make sure you know how to lean on him properly. You don't want to embarrass yourself. I couldn't take it anymore. I answered quietly. "Mother, Eric and I are splitting the cost of the wedding and the dress equally." The moment those words left my mouth, her expression turned cold. She stepped closer to me and looked down as if I were something filthy. "Don't lie. The money you make with that meager salary wouldn't even cover a scrap of lace from your dress. It's Eric's money, isn't it? Stop trying to act like you're something you're not." Then my mother delivered the final, decisive blow straight to my heart. "You really are just like your father." The moment she said it, my heart froze. Your father was the same way. Always dreaming big without any real ability, failing in business, and leaving nothing but hardship for the rest of us. He wasted his life on that pathetic little job and accomplished absolutely nothing. Something inside me snapped with an almost audible crack. My father had entrusted everything to me, not out of weakness, but to protect the family's honor. For 5 years, I had shouldered everything alone to preserve his final pride. And yet, my mother had no idea about his pain, my sacrifices, or the truth. She condemned him as a failure and labeled me as someone who never accomplished anything. She spoke as if she were the victim, without ever knowing that I was the one who had quietly saved this family from collapse. For the first time, I began to wonder if keeping silent for the sake of my father's pride truly honored him anymore. So, at my wedding, the grand celebration that should have been only about love and joy, I decided to make one final bet. If there and then, my mother had given me even a single word of genuine blessing, if she had offered me a few warm words, or if she had simply said from the heart, "I wish you happiness," just that one phrase, I would have kept my father's secret forever. I would have buried the truth about the house, about my company, about everything, and quietly started my new life with Eric. That was the last chance I was willing to give this family, but her calling me useless became the trigger. I tightened my grip on the microphone and fixed my gaze on my mother. Her confident expression had vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. "Shall we talk in a little more concrete terms about whether I'm useless or not, Mother?" I glanced at Eric beside me, who was looking at me with concern. I signaled with my eyes. "It's all right." He nodded firmly, entrusting everything to me. "First, the house you're living in now. The beautiful seaside home. Legally, that house belongs to me." A murmur swept through the hall. Aunts and uncles seated in the relatives section turned toward my mother and brothers with shocked expressions. 5 years ago, to save Dad after his business failed, I bought the family home. And 2 months ago, I finished paying off the mortgage I inherited from him. So, Mother, the house you live in is owned and maintained by your useless daughter. I could see her turning as white as paper, even from across the room. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish out of water. My brothers' faces shifted through disbelief, shame, and confusion like a turning kaleidoscope. I continued without hesitation. My voice was calm, but it carried through every corner of the hall via the microphone. And of course, it's not just about the house. Since you seem to think I'm just some insignificant assistant, I suppose I should explain what I actually do. 5 years ago, I founded an interior design firm called Avery Design. Half of the guests here tonight are either my employees or valued business partners. Half the room nodded in quiet affirmation. I caught sight of Eric's parents in the corner of my eye, watching me with worried yet unmistakably proud expressions. The company has grown steadily. Today we have offices not only in New York, but also in Los Angeles and London. The only reason I kept this modest success from the family was because of my promise to my late father. And I paused and looked each of my brothers in the eye, one by one, because I didn't want to wound your pride unnecessarily. Chris, the loans you took on to sustain your Wall Street lifestyle. Chris gasped and covered his face. Fred, the massive loan you took to purchase the latest medical equipment? Dad told me everything. Fred stared at me, pale and speechless. Tyler and Josh, I know how hard you've been working to support your wives and children on a teacher's salary. Not wealthy, but stable. I couldn't burden any of you with Dad's failed business or the family mortgage. So I decided to bear it all myself. The company debts, the house mortgage, everything. As long as I stayed silent, the glorious sons of the Anderson family would remain untarnished. That was Dad's final wish. The twins exchanged bewildered looks as if they were trying to decipher a foreign language they'd never heard before. What nonsense are you spouting, Sherry? My mother finally shrieked. The shock had worn off. Now her face burned red with fury. You've always been like this. You'll say anything to steal the spotlight. Dan would never have trusted you with something so important. And you expect me to believe you could earn that kind of money? But her desperate denial no longer reached anyone. The hall grew colder under the weight of her anger. I looked at her quietly, almost with pity. Lies, is that what you think, Mother? Then shall I show you the proof? My lawyer has a copy of the deed to the house right here. My company's financial statements were brought by my accountant, and here are 5 years' worth of bank transfer records showing every monthly payment I made into the Anderson family account. Would you like to take a look? I slowly turned my gaze toward Heather, my attorney, who was seated beside Eric. Inside her briefcase were all the documents that proved the truth. Copies of the property deed, company records, and bank statements. My mother was speechless, her lips trembling uncontrollably. Now do you understand? The daughter you called useless has been the one quietly supporting the Anderson family. Your pride and your image for the past 5 years. I'm not asking for gratitude. I just wanted you to know the truth. And there's one more thing I need to say. Gripping the microphone tightly with both hands, I delivered my final words. They were a cry from the depths of my soul. As of today, I, Sherry Manning, will end all financial support to the Anderson family. You are to vacate the house by the end of next month. But don't worry. Given my brothers' brilliant careers and incomes, I'm sure you won't be left homeless. With that, I calmly set the microphone down on the table. Then, turning my back on my stunned family, I walked toward my husband, Eric, who was waiting with open, steady arms. My mother stood pale and motionless, like a statue. My brothers' faces twisted with shame and guilt, their eyes fixed on the table. Not one of them could bring themselves to look up. The silence was finally broken by Eric. He rose slowly and spoke in a firm, resonant voice that filled the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here today to celebrate with Sherry and me. We regret to inform you that today's reception will end here. We appreciate your understanding. His calm but authoritative tone made it clear that no one would be allowed to create a scene. Someone from the relatives section tried to speak up, but one sharp glance from Eric silenced them immediately. He leaned toward me and whispered, just for me to hear, "Let's go." He gripped my hand tightly, and together, without anyone daring to stop us, we walked toward the exit. As the heavy doors began to close behind us, my mother's hysterical scream finally rang out from the hall. "Sherry, wait, what have you done?" But her voice was quickly cut off as the doors shut fully. The moment they closed, I felt it. I was finally free. Free from the long, suffocating curse that had bound me for years. By the time we arrived at the suite we'd reserved for our honeymoon, my phone was buzzing like a hornet's nest. Relentless calls and messages lighting up the screen. Mother, Chris, Fred, Tyler, Josh. The names from the Anderson family flashed wildly, one after another. I turned off my phone. Eric wrapped his arms around me gently. In his embrace, the tension I had been holding for so many years finally snapped, and I burst into tears like a child. They weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief and release, because I had finally shed the heavy armor I'd carried for so long. The next morning when we woke up, Eric's phone was full of dozens of messages from Chris. With my permission, Eric put the call on speaker. Chris's voice on the other end was weak and exhausted. "Sherry, I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry." It was the first time in my life I'd ever heard a sincere apology from my eldest brother. I know it's hard to believe after what happened yesterday, but we had no idea. We didn't know Dad was in that kind of situation. And we had no idea that you were the one who protected all of us on your own. His voice trembled with guilt. I know it sounds like an excuse, but I was drowning in my own pressures, trying to keep up the image of a Wall Street success story. I didn't have the bandwidth to see the family, especially you. No, I chose not to see you. I've been a terrible brother. I listened silently. His apology didn't sound insincere, but deep wounds don't heal overnight. "Chris, I can't accept your apology right now. What you all did to me can't be dismissed with a simple 'we didn't know.' You didn't see me. That's all there is to it." I heard him inhale sharply on the other end of the line. I continued. "As for the house, the deadline to move out is the end of next month. You'll receive formal notice through my lawyer. As for Mother's future living arrangements, the 4 brilliant sons can take care of her. This will be my last communication with you." I signaled to Eric and he ended the call. It may have seemed cold, but it was necessary. If I let their guilt soften me, we would slip back into the same old patterns. Nothing would change. To truly free myself, I had to cut those ties. After that, I received similar messages of apology from Fred and from the twins, Tyler and Josh. Every one of them said the same thing. "We didn't know. And then, please, let us make it up to you from now on." But the messages from my mother were of an entirely different nature. My voicemail was flooded with messages that bordered on verbal abuse. "You ungrateful brat. Are you planning to leave me out on the street? This is all your fault. You've destroyed the Anderson family." There wasn't the slightest hint of remorse in her words. To her, the fact that I had supported the family all these years wasn't something to be grateful for. It was an unforgivable act of betrayal that had stripped her of her authority. When I returned from my honeymoon, I issued a formal notice through my lawyer, requiring her to vacate the house. At the same time, I changed my phone number to cut off all contact with her and my brothers completely. I didn't want to leave any openings for them to step into my new life. This wasn't revenge. It was the only way to protect my heart and to give them the chance to face their own problems, for once, without relying on me. Months passed after I said goodbye to my old self and began walking my new path. My ties to the Anderson family remained severed. According to my lawyer, my mother eventually vacated the house. She rented a small apartment on the outskirts of town and now lives there alone. 6 months later, Chris unexpectedly visited my company. He looked like a completely different man from the wedding day. He was thinner, his once expensive suit now looked worn and tired. I'm truly sorry. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I just needed to tell you this. We're changing. Fred has downsized his clinic to a more sustainable level. I've moved to a smaller, more practical firm and stopped putting on airs. The twins are doing their best to support their families on their own. And Mom, she started going to therapy. Those last words shocked me more than anything. My mother, who had always been nothing but pride and control, was seeking help from a professional. Losing you was what finally made her realize the magnitude of what she'd done. It's going to take time, but she said that someday she wants to offer you a sincere apology. Over the following months, I took my time to think. Eventually, I came to one decision. I would see my family again. The moment my mother saw me, she burst into tears and collapsed. She repeated, "I'm sorry," over and over again. And this time, I could tell. It wasn't hysterical, performative, or manipulative. It was real. From that day on, our relationship reset completely. It doesn't mean we returned to the old family dynamics. Instead, we began to build something entirely new. An equal relationship, free from warped dependence and control from zero.